Hi, welcome to the ADORNit studio. My name is Georgana Hall. Today we're going to be making this darling Chamberry wreath, which is so cute to hang on your door or in any spot in your home. The colors of the Chamberry line are just scrumptious. They have warm hues to them, so they look really nice in anybody's home and are really fun to work with. So what you're going to need to start off with this easy wreath is a 14-inch foam wreath that you can get at any craft store. They're really easy to find. And what I really like about this project is if you don't have a sewing machine, it's okay because you really don't need one. If you have a needle and thread, you'll be perfect. So what we're going to do is get Chamberry fabric for your background of your wreath. I chose this quattro dot because I love that it kind of gives a polka dot feel, but is also subtle, so it really lets the flowers on the wreath pop. You're going to need a 3-inch strip, and we're going to leave the edges with a frayed edge. I really like that it kind of gives it a vintage feel. So I'm just going to take my scissors, and about 3 inches, I'm eyeballing it. It doesn't need to be exact. I'm just going to clip my fabric. That allows it to have a starting point, so then I can just simply tear it, and it tears really easy. And then that way I have that frayed edge that we talked about a minute ago. For this 14-inch wreath, I used about 6 different strips of these. So go ahead and cut 3-inch width and then 6 times, okay? And you can either sew them together, which is what I did, so that it made it a little bit faster, or you can go ahead and do each strip one at a time. And so here's mine already sewed together. And I'm just going to find my edge, and I'm going to start on the back of the wreath. And I just used a few pins to kind of put it in place. That's why I love the foam, is because you can put your pins in to go ahead and do your placement. And then I just go around, and you can wrap it as tight as you want or as loose as you want. You don't need glue or anything to hold it in place because it's going to wrap around itself, and that's what kind of holds it there. Okay, so now that you've got it all the way wrapped around, we're going to turn it over to where you started, where you had that pin in there. And we're just going to use a little bit of tacky glue. I love this quick dry glue. It's really easy to use, and just like the label says, it's quick to dry. So I had a little bit of a tail left over, so I'm just going to bring that over and clip it in the back, kind of in the center. And get rid of my excess. We don't need it. And then I just run a little bit of that tacky glue right along the back side, just to kind of hold it in place. And then while that's drying, I'll stick a few pins in that foam to kind of hold it down while it's drying, and it just helps hold it there while I continue to work on my project. As you'll see, you can see all the fun edges of how that's frayed, and if you have any loose threads, you can go ahead and clip them off and move them around however you want that to look. So there's the base. Really simple and quick to do. Now I really like this like kind of banner pennant behind all my flowers. It kind of draws your attention to those flowers. So that's what we're going to make next. And we just use the cotton Chamberry fabric. This is the red cluster. And what I did to kind of give it some stability to have shape and form is I used what's called interfacing. And it comes in lots of different weights. So some are really light and some are heavier. I wanted the heaviest that there is because that's really going to give your banner a lot of form to it. And so you're going to cut it about 30 inches. It really depends on what you want, how long you want that banner to be and how gathered you want it to be. So I cut mine 30, and I cut it about 2 inches. And then I also cut my red cluster fabric a little bit bigger than that. So I cut it about 2.5, 3 inches. You're going to cut it again, so it really doesn't matter. Like I said, this is a really fun project because it doesn't have to be precise like in quilting. So there is my red cluster fabric and my interfacing. And I want it to have that fun triangle edge. And so I just take my scissors and you just snip it at each edge to create that triangle. And it's fun because the more it's imperfect, the better, and more character it gives your project. So there we go. And then I just kind of lay that interfacing right on top of my fabric, and I want to cut away my fabric to look the same. And I cut it about 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch bigger, because you want your interfacing to be smaller, because you can see right here, you can see how I have sewn inside and it has kind of a frayed edge. So that's why we're cutting it smaller. And right now I have this fabric folded over so that I have 2 pieces. So you can see right here I have 2 pieces. So what we're going to do next is we're going to lay that out and we're going to sew with our sewing machine. So I'm going to put my interfacing on the inside, so it's kind of like making a sandwich. So I'm going to put my bottom piece face down, so the wrong side of the fabric is facing up. And you can usually tell it's the wrong side because it's a little bit more faded. It's not as vibrant on the color, so it's usually easy to tell. And then I'm going to lay my top piece right on top, and it's going to be right side up. So you can see right here, if I turn it over, this is the correct side, and then on the top it's the correct side. And I've just kind of sandwiched them together. You could pin them to make it easier as you're sewing, just kind of to hold that in place. Okay, so let's take it to the sewing machine. Okay, now that we have it over at the sewing machine, we are going to sew around the edge of the banner a 1/4 inch seam. So here we are with our finished banner. You can see it's a little bit longer than our wreath, and we're going to gather it. Now, throughout this project, I'm going to be talking a lot about a gathering stitch. And what a gathering stitch is, it's a long stitch which allows you to hold your fabric together but yet create a gather, like the name states, so that it's easy to make your project have dimension and, you know, have a lot of life to it. So what we're going to do now is we are going to take some embroidery floss. And I wanted it to be a chunky stitch, and so I used my entire strand of embroidery floss. And I'm just going to start at the top, and I'm going to do a really long gathering stitch right down the center with this embroidery floss. And I chose yellow because I wanted to see the embroidery floss. I wanted it to have some contrast. And you can see that I'm doing a long stitch along that. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of eyeball it. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this banner, and to go ahead and finish it off, I'm just going to do my last stitch, and then I am going to go ahead and I'm going to pull it, and you'll see how that gathering stitch works. I'm holding on to this end of the embroidery floss, and then I just pull it and it gathers my fabric. That's what's so fun about a gathering stitch. And so now you have your banner all done, and you can kind of lay it down on your wreath and decide where you want to place it. And I kind of left my embroidery floss, I didn't tie it off yet. I just kind of stick it in there, because you're going to kind of move it around as you add to it. And so that just kind of gives it and holds its placement. And I'm going to pull out my pins again. I keep saying, you know, those pins are great to hold in this floral foam because they're so easy to move around. So I'm going to stick some pins in there so I can hold that on. And now we're going to start making our flowers. We're going to learn how to make 3 different flowers. I have several different rolled roses, so I'm going to teach you some quick step-by-steps on each of those. All right, so the first rose we're going to work on is this really pretty, it's a scalloped rose. And I love this one because it's really big on there and really adds a lot of contrast. And I love that the scallop on it really gives the dimension, and we sew on it so that it has that frayed edge. And once again, you don't have to have a sewing machine to do this. You can use a hand stitch instead of a sewing machine. So first you're going to start with a 5-inch strip of fabric. And again, I frayed both of my edges by clipping and tearing my fabric because I really like that look. And then I'm going to cut it about 30 inches. And this just depends on how big you want your rose to be. It can be any length and size. It's just going to depend on what it looks like. So have some fun and play around with it. So now that I've clipped that 30 inches, you want to fold it in half. And you want to get your iron out, and you're going to fold it wrong sides together so that on both sides you have right side showing outward, okay? And you're just going to iron that down so that you have a nice crease. And this just, it's not an important step. It just kind of helps hold it all together. I really like to use tips and tricks that make my projects a lot simpler and easy to do. So now that we have that all ironed, we're going to use a washable marker or anything like that. I'm just using a pencil to lightly trace, and you can just eyeball it. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. But I'm just going to lightly draw some scallops onto my fabric. And you can have them be really long scallops or really short scallops. Just again, you know, it just depends on what you want your flower to turn out like. And so I suggest doing a few different flowers so that you can find what you like the best on your project. So I just lightly am drawing those scallops on there. So next we're going to take it to the sewing machine, or if you're just using a needle and thread, then go ahead and you're going to follow those scallop marks and you're going to sew them shut, okay? Okay, so now that we have that all sewn right along your scallop edges, you're also going to put a gathering stitch in. And so I've already done that on this one. And I'm going to hold my edge, I'm going to hold my long thread because I did this on my sewing machine. And I am just going to quick gather that. The more gathers you put in it, the closer and tighter it's going to be. And it will kind of, as you gather it, it's going to start to twirl on its own, which is exactly what we want to have happen. Okay, so now that we've got that, we are going to start rolling up your flower. And you can start, I like to start on the edge that I didn't gather on. That's going to be my inside. And you can tell how the fabric already has a natural curl to it. So I'm just going to go right along with that natural curl, and we're just going to twirl it around itself in a circle. And then when we flip it over, there's your rose, just like that. It's really simple. And then I get out my needle and thread. Now for this step, I like to use a heavier thread. This is like a hand quilting thread. I personally like it. You don't have to have it. I just like it because it kind of holds it together and doesn't break as easy. And you'll see on this flower I used a dark thread, and that's so that you can see where I have stitched a little bit better. On your project, you're just going to want to use a coordinating thread to your fabric. So you just kind of move it around however you like, and you can flip those petals out and just make sure you hold on to each of those ends right there, because that's where we're going to want to sew. Because if you let go, then your flower comes apart. See how that happens. Okay, so I'm going to show you our finished flower on the wreath. Now you take your needle and thread and you close all those edges together so they hold really well. And there is our finished flower. And you can just poof it up if you want it to be really fluffy, or smash it down so that it has a flatter rose fill. Do whatever you would like. So the rolled rose flower, you're going to use a contrasting fabric. And this particular flower I use several times in my wreath. So you can make a few of these. I'm just going to show you how to make it, and then you can duplicate it throughout your wreath. You can do various sizes. This one I did about 1.5 inches. And so I just tore it again, like I've showed you. And then I like to clip off my selvage edges so that I don't have those on there. And I just, you know, quick cut them off. And then I just kind of hand crease my fold in this one. I don't use my iron. If you want to, you can go ahead and do that. At the edge, you're going, at one end, it doesn't matter which end, you're going to just tie one knot in it. And that's going to be your starting point of where you're going to roll your rose. And if you have a little edge like that, you're just going to clip it off with your scissors. Okay, so we have to have a base to put this rolled rose on. And I like to use a high quality felt. It's different than your craft store felt that's really flimsy. This can be bought on the roll at your local quilt shop. And so I just get several different scraps, and then you're going to just kind of freehand a circle. And this circle is all dependent on how big you want your flower to be. So this one I'm doing about 3 inches. So there's my base that we're going to start with. Then once again, I'm going to use this quick dry tacky glue. Love this stuff. It's so quick and easy for these kind of projects. And I'm just going to put a dab right there in the middle for my starting point. And I just kind of move my glue around so that there's not a huge blop, but enough to really hold down my fabric. Okay, so you're going to start with that knot that we made a minute ago. And your fabric folds on both sides so that you have the right side out on both edges. See how on both edges? And then you're going to go around this knot that you started. And you're just going to, like the name of the rose is you roll it around. And you just kind of twist it around. And that's why you want your fabric right side out, so that either way you twist it, the correct side of your fabric is showing. So there on my hand, in my hand, I have started a good portion of this flower. So once I get a good portion, then I go ahead and I put it down onto that felt. And then I get my glue and I just kind of keep going around that felt circle. And that's how you can make it as big or as small as you want. And I did several different various sizes on my wreath because you want to have it have a really fun effect. You'll continue to go around your circle until you get it the size that you would like it to be. And then you can roll your fabric much tighter if you want a tighter rose. I prefer to have mine be a really loose roll. And so I just kind of barely tack it down. Okay, now I am happy with that size of rolled flower. So what I'm going to do is I am going to trim my felt to the size of that rolled rose right there. And then I'm going to take the back and I'm going to just flip it down around and put some glue on the bottom just to hold it down. And then I'll trim off that tail of fabric. And that rolled rose is now finished. Super simple and easy to make. Then you can just take a pin and start layering your wreath. And that just kind of holds it in. Okay, so now that we've finished our rolled rose, we're going to go ahead and do our final flower, which is really fun. It's a kind of a ruffled flower with a wood button in the center. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and start out and you're going to use the same technique where you tear your fabric and you're going to do about a 3-inch width on that one, and you're going to do it the width of fabric. And then go ahead and cut it to whatever length you want. On most of these I did about a 20 to 30-inch length. And again, that all depends on what size of flower you want. So really have some fun and play around with it. So this one I chose a yellow fabric because you want to choose different varieties of colors with different contrast levels. And so what I did is I folded it in half so that both sides had the right sides out, and then I put a gathering stitch in it. Okay, so then you're going to need to have a base of felt, again like the rolled rose, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to just eyeball that and cut it into a circle for your base. Really simple. You decide what size you think you need to fill into that space. And then you're going to just put a little bit of that quick dry tacky glue around the edge to hold your flower in place. And then this fabric, as it gathers, it kind of has a natural curl to it. And so I want to put down the curl so that it lays flat outward. So we're going to put it down this way. And I just love how that fabric is frayed and it adds such a vintage fun flair to your projects. And I kind of gather it as I go to make my flower fit nicely on here. And then if I want to add some more glue, I can. Or at the end you could use a quick stitch to stitch it all down. But see how that just kind of lays really nice and flat on there. And then I just kind of push it all down, and I'm going to set it aside for a minute and let it dry. And you'll see I have this edge right here that's the unfinished edge. I'm just going to tuck that under right there, and then that will kind of finish it off nicely. Okay, so now we're going to do what ADORNit has, and it's called an ADORNit wood button. And these are so much fun to add as embellishments onto your sewing projects or craft projects, even into your scrapbooks. And so what we're going to use today is the Chamberry flower wood button. And they are laser cut out on a machine, and we have all different designs that are so fun to use. Okay, so we're going to decoupage our wood buttons with our coordinating Chamberry scrapbook papers. They're designer papers, and what's so fun about ADORNit is with every fabric release, we also have a coordinating designer paper release. So you can see all the fun designs here and how they coordinate with the fabric. So you can go ahead and choose whatever you think will look really fun with your wreath. I chose to do this pretty flower that coordinated. And so what you're going to do is you're going to put your wood button face down onto your paper. So you're going to put your paper wrong side down, then put your wood button right on top of that. And you're going to go ahead and you're going to trace right around that flower so then you know where to cut this paper out. And then you'll go ahead and cut it out with a pair of scissors. Okay, here is my finished flower. And I've cut it out, and now I really like to use Mod Podge as my decoupage medium, but there's so many different ones out there. My sisters really like using Zip Dry. There's a lot out there to choose from. So go ahead and use your favorite decoupage medium, and I'm just going to dip my sponge brush in there and lightly coat my flower. And you don't need to use a lot. I like to be able to see enough of the glue but not gob it on there so that it wrinkles my paper. So I just lightly brushed it on. And then I take my paper flower and I lay it right down onto where it fits, kind of assess where it goes, lay it on, and then you can smooth it out. If you have a paper brayer, go ahead and roll that over. Or if you're like me, just go ahead and push it down. And then you're going to want to let that dry. Once it's dry, then you'll go ahead and I like to poke my holes where the button holes are. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sew that on. And you can see right here on this finished sample, I even put another layer of another wood button onto that right here. And then I just finished it off with some ribbon. And look how cute that is on there. And just add so much texture and dimension onto your wreath. And another fun thing is right here you can see we have another wood button, and I just used it as a background to the rolled rose, so I just put that right on top. Now we have finished our wreath. I've showed you 3 fun different flowers and how to make that cute banner. So you'll go ahead and you'll just add each flower and keep continuing to embellish that until you're done. And then to tie it off, I just took and I did about a 4-inch width of fabric and went ahead and tied that on, and there you have it. You're ready to hang it on your door. So much fun. I love this Chamberry fabric collection by ADORNit. You can go online to our website, adornit.com, and you can buy this kit if you want to make exactly how it is. Or go ahead and go into your craft room and get out your fun fabric scraps and make one. So thanks so much for tuning in today, and we'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more fun videos by ADORNit.